I am Professor Benkeblia from the University of West Indies, Department of Life Science, Professor in Crop Science, and today we are here at the Borders Research Station to execute training for the RADA and the Borders researchers on the management of the pre and post-harvest losses of Scotch bonnet pepper. We start by the pre-harvest. So we spoke about what are the pre-harvest factors and what are the different factors that affect the pre-harvest losses. Of course, the pre-harvest a lot of farmers and even Scotch bonnet producers are not familiar with or they know what some parameters, some factors are not given too much importance. For example, the quality of seed. As you can see here, this is a field of Scotch bonnet pepper production. We have been emphasizing the importance of the seed quality and also the handling of the material in the field. Why? Because parameters are not well what we call the good agricultural practices, how to handle the seed, how to plant the seed, how, for example, to monitor the crop, good irrigation, the good quality. So what we did, we have, that caused, losses. Because one of the issues that the developing countries, they do have is we estimate the losses, up to 45 and even more, 45% and even more. So that means half of what we are growing is lost before harvesting. And the goal of this training is to familiarize the trainees what are the good approaches and what are the best practices in order to reduce that losses. For example, planting here, what you do have, you see how beds are organized, what is, for example, the density, what is the presence of the weed. You see here between the interrow, you have some mulching, you have for example, also you have, some labels to identify. This is an experimental plot to identify, the different, plot. So this is a good planting. What I want really to emphasize is you see here you see some weed here, and you see some, some, heads is not clear around, the field. In my opinion, this is a very good, ecological approach, because the good ecological approach is how to use the system to protect the system and to keep the system healthy. It's not to remove all the weeds or to clear around the field of production. No, we should keep that, all that, the presence of some weeds and, the presence of plants, around, like, a border plant. That plants, they protect your field rather than to, for example, to compete with your field. Why? Because this is an ecosystem. And, in any ecosystem, the presence of that, of that species is required for the balance of the ecosystem. If you remove all the weeds or you clear around, what you do, you weaken your, ecosystem, you weaken your plant, and therefore they become more exposed to pests and disease. But that, few weeds and that, the bush surrounding your, plot is protecting because it's also habitat for disease, as some pests and disease, and therefore, your plant is well protected. So this is, for the pre-harvest. All right, so if we can notice here, so this weed, okay, so it's not really a problem for your crop, so you can even dig it out or leave it here. So you see how the Scotch bonnet is growing. If we compare all the height of all the plants, we can estimate that the Scotch bonnet, the plant is growing well. This is dry leaves, it looks very healthy. There is no sign of any pest or disease. The plant are healthy, the plant is growing well. Of course, it's not a uniform growth, it is as any plant. But overall, if we see the size is about 2 to 3 feet high, so that means they are growing well because of the, probably for sure, because you see the drip irrigation system, which provides water where it's needed. And of course, I think good fertilization was provided here. And you see here the field, the density is optimal, and we can expect this is here. Looks here is we see just some ants, but usually ants are not a problem for the crops. Okay, we see ants here, but ants usually they do not cause real problem to plants. What is some pests, like especially like or we don't see any disease. For overall here, the plant look very healthy. Okay. And they start here, so you see, for example, they start, this is a flower, and later on the flower will be pollinated. So this is almost open. This is young flower, and later on, so this is the flower, open flower here. Okay, so now is the blooming period where the flower, and after, of course, you see here this plant is more mature. This plant is more mature, but this is very young, so you see, but it has some open flowers here. And of course, we can probably expect, like for example, if you look at this plant, it's plenty of flowers, and even you have one fruit here. Okay, let's start. You see the fruit is here. All right. Okay, so I have 1, 2 fruit here start to develop. Okay, and one very small here. So you see, and this plant is, look, here you have also some that is bigger, this one. Okay, so this bigger one. And we can, it looks like, it will have a good yield. Can expect at least 30 to 40, fruits, for this plant, even more. You see here. All right, so this is, and you see the plant is very healthy, it grows very well. So this is, I think, it's a very good, field of, production. Of course, this is experimental work, but it might be a good model for the farmers, how to grow well surrounded. And this is what we are recommending is an ecological approach. This approach is much better. It helps, to use less pesticide, less chemicals, and of course the yield is a better yield, and it preserves also the environment. And this model is more sustainable, and this is the goal now of agriculture, is sustainable agriculture, is growing and protecting the environment. And this is the role of the ecological approach, is we grow food, we produce food, but also we should protect the environment, because if we don't protect the environment, this environment within few years will not be possible to grow any crop in this environment. All right, so this is the fruit of the Scotch bonnet. So when it comes to harvesting, you have to harvest it carefully, to handle it carefully. Why? Because any crop, including Scotch bonnet or any crop, if you don't harvest it with care, so what happens? Microcut or whatever, just when you separate it from the plant, you stress it, microcut, stress it, and this is it reduces the shelf life and the quality, of course, and accelerates spoilage and decay of the fruit. So that's why the fruit should be, any fruit should be handled carefully, like you handle a baby. So carefully, you have to carry it carefully, to pack it carefully, and of course, after you harvest it, you have to put it under a cool area. If you don't have here, for example, you have a tree there, you can just put the trays over there under the shade until you transport them to the cooling room, or for example for the market or whatever. So this is this is how you have to, and why we have to harvest it with the peduncle here. Why? Because if you harvest it with a shorter one, what happens? You will have a higher respiration. That means the shelf life is shorter. So harvested with peduncle, that means you can keep it for longer. Okay, and it comes by itself when it's ripe. When the fruit is ripe, all what you have to do is just to twist the fruit, and then it comes by itself because it's ripe. Okay, this is what we call the senescence zone. when the full is ripe, so it can easily be separated. This zone is very weak, so you just twist the fruit and it comes by itself. Okay, or you can use in case clipper, but we don't use clipper usually. We just do manual harvesting with the hand. So this is a nursery of the Scotch bonnet pepper. So you can see here the nursery is very well maintained because the quality of the produce starts. You see the healthy seedling are well maintained with the adequate irrigation system, which is the overhead sprinklers, and maintain it on the bench to avoid any insect to reach them or any rat or animals that might access the nursery. The nursery is clean, well ventilated to assure an optimal environment for the growth of the seedling, because at this stage these plants are very sensitive to environment, very sensitive to nutrient, very sensitive to pest and disease. And why having of a good vigor seedling of a good vigor, you can expect a good growth of the plant and of course high yield. So this is a nursery where we germinate the seed. When we keep the seedling, we grow the seedling until they reach about 3 to 4 inch, and after they are transplanted to the field. And of course, before when the seedling they leave the nursery, they are left outside for about 1 day to acclimate with the external environment. They are like a baby. When they leave the nursery, here they are very well protected. When they leave the nursery, we give them sometimes about 24 hours to acclimate with the external environment, and then we transplant them in the field. So you see, this is why one of the critical step in preventing the pre-harvest losses. They have good seedling, good quality seedling, healthy seedling. You can have healthy plant, have a good yield, and therefore you can expect a very good produce, which looks like that healthy produce. No disease, nothing, no disease, no pest, no damage, it's a good quality produce. So after we grow, of course, so we harvest the produce. Generally, we use crates like that. Make sure that to not stack the produce, because the produce is alive, and the quality depends also on what you harvested. Having in mind that the quality post-harvest doesn't improve the quality, it just maintains the quality you harvested. So after you harvest, you have to handle carefully crates. You have to load them, transport them carefully, avoid shocks, avoid exposing the crates to sunlight, cool them, protect them. If you transport them, cover them and deliver them in a good condition, because the quality has a limited time. For the Scotch bonnet pepper, the quality is about 7 to 10 days maximum. So shorter, better you handle, shorter you deliver, better is for the consumer and better is the quality. If you take a long time to market, to transport, or therefore you will lose freshness, and therefore your produce will be of bad quality. So this is, and we are here, of course, the post-harvest, we check the quality. For the Scotch bonnet pepper, we can, what we do, we just can check the color of the Scotch bonnet, the produce. We can check also sometimes the grade is small, medium, or large size, because the price might vary from the small one like this one to the medium one, and it might be more bigger than this one when it's fully mature. And the post-harvest, of course, we use different technologies. That one that we recommended is to use a modified, a special packaging material, a plastic material, which is called modified atmosphere packaging with cooling. With that, if the produce harvested was of good quality, you can be sure that your produce will be kept for in a good condition, a good freshness for at least 7 to 10 days. And this lab, for example, here we are in a lab where they do that control, they check the quality, of course, especially if the Scotch bonnet is for the export, because you know when you export, there is criteria that you have to comply with. Why? Because there is a regulation, a minimum size, minimum color probably, and this is what you have to. If for the local market, the condition or the quality is less restrictive because it's a local market. But when you export, the quality, there is some criteria that you have to comply with. All right, so this is for the post-harvest, and remember, as we said, we have to repeat that post-harvest quality depends on the pre-harvest quality. The post-harvest quality technology, whatever you use, it will not improve the quality at harvest. So that's why the pre-harvest stage is very important in the post-harvest handling, storage, and quality of the produce. So in conclusion, we can say that this training will be of great benefit for the farmers, for the agro-processors, for the stakeholders, and even for the growth of the economy of the country. By this training program, what we can, the goal is not only to minimize or to manage the losses, but also to develop and improve the value chain of the Scotch bonnet pepper in Jamaica, improve also the food safety, boost the agro-processing sector, boost the export of the Scotch bonnet pepper, which is well known and well appreciated in the international market, especially in USA and Canada. And it will also benefit the personnel of the research personnel as well as the extension officer of Jamaica, and also to help the farmer to develop the Scotch bonnet production, and also improve their profit, because we know that a lot of farmers now are interested by developing Scotch bonnet production, and with this training course they can minimize losses, improve production, improve yield, and also improve their income. And we hope that with that training the extension officers as well as the farmers got a good information, as well as a better approach how to improve the Scotch bonnet value chain, and also how to develop this production at the national level, and even also contribute to the growth of the agriculture in Jamaica as well as the GDP of the country, because we know that one of the priorities of the Jamaican government is to boost agriculture and also to ensure about food security. Thank you for this training. I will thank the FAO as well, and as the Bodles Research Institute as well as RADA for having that opportunity to give that to the specialists, the farmers and stakeholders, to improve their knowledge on Scotch bonnet pepper from the field to the consumer.